Okay. First of all, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure and it's a real honor for both of us to have played a part in hosting this and sharing one of my favorite films with this audience. You know, it's interesting. The first time I watched this film, I remember feeling like it was such a grim and what's the word I'm looking for? Like almost a pessimistic view of what the future held. And now that I look back, it was like maybe 10 years ago. And now watching the film in 2024, not to be 2025, first of all, it seems like you're very accurate in a lot of your predictions, from Siri to FaceTime, to some other things that I think ring true for a lot of Africans right now, where we see a lot of modernization, but certain things have stayed the same. How do you feel about your prediction, and do you want to tell us about your ability to see the future? And have you had that since you were a child?
Thank you. I would say I don't want to be in a position of somebody who has this kind of dystopian view on Africa, but you know that there are always so many expectations of filmmakers. You know, people think we're supposed to see something that is not happening. I would say that film was more about the present, actually. Back then, I would call it a cautionary tale. It was mainly to represent an Africa I didn't want to see, in some ways. And it was almost saying, if we continue with some of these things, this is what we're going to have. And the concept was to kind of depict a kind of society decaying, at many levels, but the two girls didn't want to die with society. They want to stay alive. So they were in trance, refusing to kind of go with the whole, what you could call pessimistic, you call negativity of the place. And they could do it with what they had, not much. So that's kind of how, and cinema gives us a tool to do that. It's not just about telling a story. It's about creating this kind of sensation and this kind of energy. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
You were very successful with that, because I think that's what real art is. It makes you feel something, whether you can put it into words or completely explain what it is that you're experiencing. Real art will make you feel something, whether it's good or bad. It's a guttural reaction. And I think you not only did that with the story you were telling, but with the imagery. There's so many, Abella, you want to speak to what we do, as Nolly Babes?
Yes, we created Nolly Babes in 2017. We grew up watching Nollywood films, me and our other sister, Dara. Where is she? Right there. We grew up in Nigeria. We just watched Nigerian films all the time, and we weren't exposed to other African films. So this was really a treat, seeing something that really resonated with us. So yeah, that's what
I think through imagery, right? Essentially, Nolly Babes started as an Instagram page, and it's grown to so much more. But there's so many stunning stills in your film. Can you speak a little bit to what you intended to convey? First of all, I have a question for you. I guess that's what we're doing. That's what a Q&A is, right? But specifically, something I noticed this third time watching the film is I thought the film was all at night. But then I began to hear roosters in the background, which to me, as when I would go to the village, we're Igbo, when we'd go to the village, roosters signify the morning time. So I noticed that it was dark in the film, but we would be hearing roosters in the background. So was the film set at night? I guess that's the first question. And then B, or does it just represent darkness as a whole? And then can you explain some of the visuals and the cinematography that goes into filming, especially Black people in darkness, and how you were able to capture that so beautifully?
Okay.
Sorry, that was a lot. I'm sorry.
That was good.
So I would say, yes, I planned to put the day at the end of the film. The whole thing was like showing this character going through a kind of tunnel. And then at the end, there's daylight. But to be honest, when I put daylight, it didn't look great. you know, so that's why I cut it out.
Okay, interesting.
Yes, what you hear is right, because when you shoot at night, they start coming, you know, right? Then you have to stop. But obviously, animals kind of know that, you know, day is coming. So we end up always shooting around 5 o'clock in the morning. And then,
wow.
you know. I would say that for the visual of the film, it was kind of challenging. It was my first time shooting digital back then, you know, and it was, the two characters were, one was very light skinned, one was dark skinned. Mm-hmm. So the idea was to manage it was to maybe to just take out the red, you know, and then I started working on cold colors, you know, like blue and green, and it made them look alike actually, while they're very different.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was hoping to create this kind of effect, you know, of the film. I don't know if it's science fiction or horror, whatever it was, but it was really to take out this red tone and then make it like gold, you know. And the digital was kind of, it's not what it is today, but it was interesting, you know, because the brand of the camera you pick was really kind of important. So that kind of playing with the digital gave also a lot of possibilities, you know. We could shoot more because I edited the film myself, you know, just for you to know. It took me 1 full year to edit it. Wow. Somebody had to kick me out of the editing room because they felt I was spoiling the film now, you know, which was a little bit true. So between, I think it was August 2005 and 2006, I don't know what happened. Just editing. So. But one of the things I like with editing is the moment where you control something, because the rest you don't control, you know. Actors are too crazy to control, you know, then the light, the day, the technician, whatever. So once you have the material, now you feel like this is my time, you know, I can do whatever I want. And also, between what we shot, you know, and what you kind of felt you wanted, there's always like a gap, you know. Then is a moment where you can catch up, you know, and that's what I did.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, just the fact that you edited this whole thing yourself is kind of insane. Intense, but you know, it came out beautifully. Another, I guess, as a woman watching the film and sort of stringing things together between the title, Le Saignantes. Pardonnez-moi, my French is not that good. And then, you know, the idea of that translating to the Bloodettes, the idea of talking about the moon and how it coincides with the woman's cycle, and just our protagonists in this film being two women. Can you speak to the intentionality behind centering women and femininity? And I know Mavongu, am I pronouncing that correctly? I know that's somewhat of a taboo subject to discuss in Cameroonian culture from the research I've done, but from what I understand, that is also somewhat of a centered around feminism, or femininity, I should say, specifically. Can you speak to the role in which womanhood and being a woman, or the essence of a woman, played in the role of this? It's almost like you're saying that women are the saviors. Is that an assumption?
So, I don't know what to say. Some people thought I was a woman and they were disappointed. You know? Because when you say Jean, somebody say Jean.
Yes.
So what I can say can play against me. But I would say I just felt it was important and interesting to kind of gather some of these elements. You know, one is the myth or tradition you're talking about, Vungu, which is a women's secret society. Was, I'm not sure, you know, I'm not part of it. So it was the idea that when anything is wrong, women kick men out of the village and start performing the Muvungu. And I kind of felt like things were going bad in Cameroon. So maybe it's time to call for a Muvungu. So I didn't know much about it. I read about it. And I decided to use it because we tend to use African traditions in a funny way. I want to put it like in the future and not in the past. Not like something that is kind of holding us back, but something that could really get us forward. So that's how I kind of organized that. And picking the characters, the girls, I didn't want them to be too old or too young. You know, too old, they would have been professional prostitute. Too young, they would have been like pedophilia. But I wanted some kind of age group where they kind of can do what you saw, you know. And I would tell you the truth, it's political, because if it's about guys, nobody cares. You kill them or you do whatever, nobody cares. But girls, everybody's involved. The politics, religion, the traditions, the parents, everybody tried to control the sexuality. So, and I felt that that was the perfect characters to really be able to kind of present that society and how things are going the way it's going.
That really ties so many strings together, because I felt as though their sexuality was so empowering. I mean, it was the final force in the end that really got rid of that final boss, if you will. Or is that not the case?
So I have to be careful here. Okay. I would say this. It's a transactional kind of society and situation. These guys with power want sex. The girls have sex and they want the money or something, you know. So it's like they don't want to give it really, but they want kind of benefits. And then the whole thing is about playing, pretending to give, and then trying to get what they want. Okay. I think that transactional society is kind of very present, you know. And the way power works, you know, and I don't know why it always ends up with girls, you know, in Africa, I don't know. They're always the one at the end who kind of...
They're the most vulnerable in society.
I'll tell you, one of the first idea I had about this film, it was that I went to Cameroon, and it was like, I went to the Minister of Culture, and then I went to say hello to the director. It was a lady that back then, and then she said to me, go say hello to the Minister of Culture. I said, okay, but I don't really like these guys, you know, so why should I go say hello? He said, no, it's good for, you know, to come and say hello. And I said, okay, I'll go and say hello. I went to the office where you're supposed to take appointment, then this guy asked me to pay. And I'm like, first I don't want to see this guy, and then I'm going to pay, and I refused. So I said, okay. And I went back home, and then I told the story to my neighbor. He was a young girl like these ones. She's like, the minister, I had his number, so he's like, and then she had like 10 numbers like this. And her friend came, she had even more numbers. So I felt like these two girls together could make a coup. They really control the place, you know, where I would have paid, you know, like, I'm not even sure that I would watch out to be the minister. So I felt that, you know, what are these guys doing with these girls, really? Like, they had all the numbers. So it was showing how much power actually they kind of have, you know, even if now it's about, you know, how the whole interest and how they're conscious about the power. So that's how I kind of decided to make this.
It seems like you're saying it was like the power dynamic always seemed to favor one side, and instead in the film it tilted a little bit in the other direction where the power shifted. I mean, thank you for sharing that. I guess we can ask one more question, then we'll maybe send it to the audience for just a few more. I had a question regarding the idea of death and mortality and just decay. And it was interesting to me because I began to realize that the WIP was just like a wedding. Like in Nigerian culture, weddings are like the thing. It's the biggest industry. People are making a lot of money from weddings. You look forward to weddings. And in the film, you sort of flipped the script and made it more about death and the wake. Can you speak a little bit to the commentary you're trying to make on society there? And also, like, I don't know, like the maggots and the worms, like, I feel like those only come out when things are dead, right? Actually, I don't know what breed of worm they are. Maybe I look like it, but sorry. Death.
I would say that it's one of the things saying in the film, how do you make a horror film? I don't know, because it's a fiction, you know, and maybe it's not. But I'll maybe put another thing, which is about genre. I was trying to make an impossible genre, you know. Let's say you try to make horror, but people are not scared of death, you know. What kind of horror would it be, you know? And even in the beginning, when I say to try to make a science fiction in a country, speculation, futuristic in a country that has no future. So another thing is the idea that when we make films, we tend to mimic, the other films, which is, you're kind of being taught that in film school. But I kind of developed this thing I'm calling making movies from a place and not for an audience. So I didn't care about you guys. I was just trying to make a film from where I am. Yeah. Like, how do I look at the world? How do I look at cinema itself? So this perspective that is kind of local gives you another perspective on cinema, So you cannot just be mimicking what you see in other films and then, and that's what I did with the science fiction, with the police, investigation, with horror. So the genre, yes, the idea of playing the genre while actually I'm talking about society, obviously funerals are really great parties. Nobody could kick you out of funerals anyway, so it's not like a wedding where you can say you're not invited, So when you come to cry, you're welcome, So that's how also you realize that a lot more is happening, and that's something maybe you should be worried about, because there are phenomena like this that doesn't seem to kind of make people worried. And I felt that it was a sign that there's something wrong, actually even wishing more parties, meaning wishing or death somehow, otherwise, there's no way you will have it. So I think that was just the idea that when we make films, maybe let's think about the place we made them from, and reinvent the genre instead of, avoiding it. But even if at the end, you end up in the genre. Because I was very surprised when they said that was the first African science fiction film. I was like, I was trying to make an impossible science fiction film. But obviously, you play with that genre a little bit so that kind of look like, So.
I personally feel like the idea of having to categorize things in the first place is a very Western concept of having to have things fit into certain genres in the first place. So I think just inherently as Africans, when we create things, we're not ever limited, but society outside of Africa sort of have created those sorts of parameters. Yeah. But I think at this point we'll throw any questions out to the audience. Does anyone have any?
This famous French filmmaker, Jean-Louis Godard, says that editing is the heartbeat. So it was very hard for me to give my heart to somebody else. So I think there are many things in a film that are very literal. You can explain, you can tell people to do this, and there are other things you feel. And that's kind of how I work on this one. I would say that I'm an editor. I'm kind of a frustrated musician because I've never been able to play music, but I like cutting music or rhythm, and I felt that there was kind of a music in it, which is not straightforward, very rational. So, and again, I'm the first audience as an editor, and I feel that, cutting it, I kind of get it to the place I want it to be by feeling, and rhythm is very important. And it's not very rational. I cannot explain to you, but I feel like this works, or like this doesn't work. That's how I can put it,
Okay.
Thank you so much for creating this film. One question I have, there are definitely some moments where I found myself laughing out loud. I'm curious if you could speak more about just the comedy aspects of the film.
I'm afraid actually to answer this because if you laugh at a place I didn't expect you to laugh, I'll kill the whole thing. So I won't say anything.
But thank you. Yeah.